Isabel woke up that Saturday morning with the sun already high, filtering through the white linen curtains of the bedroom. Marcos, her husband, was beside her, still asleep. She watched his serene face for a moment, feeling a wave of gratitude for the life they had built together. 10 years of marriage, she thought, as she quietly got up not to wake him. The house was quiet, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air, a routine Isabel cherished. She sat at the kitchen table, mentally reviewing the preparations for the anniversary party that would take place that night. Friends and family would come to celebrate the milestone, and everything needed to be perfect. Isabel was a respected journalist, known for her integrity and dedication. Her work often involved digging deeply into stories, uncovering truths that others might overlook. This dedication had earned her a reputation for being relentless in pursuit of the facts, a trait that she was proud of, yet knew could sometimes create tension in her personal life. Marcos, in turn, was a successful businessman, always on the lookout for new business opportunities. His work often took him away from home, but he made every effort to ensure that his absences did not affect their relationship. Together, they formed a couple admired by many, with an apparently perfect life. During breakfast, Marcos came down the stairs, already dressed for a last-minute meeting. "Sorry, love, but I need to sort out a problem at the office. I promise I'll be back in time for the party," he said, giving her a quick kiss before leaving. Isabel smiled, accustomed to Marcos's last-minute commitments. She spent the day organizing the final details of the party, between calls to the caterer and adjustments to the decoration. She wanted everything to reflect the sophistication and warmth that characterized their life together. As the night approached, the house began to fill with laughter and lively conversations. The guests arrived, bringing energy and enthusiasm. Isabel circulated among them, ensuring everyone was having a good time. She exchanged pleasantries, laughed at jokes, and shared stories, all the while keeping an eye on the clock, waiting for Marcos to return. Marcos arrived soon after, bringing a bouquet of flowers for Isabel, which she received with a warm hug. His presence seemed to light up the room, and Isabel felt a sense of relief and joy at having him by her side. As the night went on, Isabel paused for a moment, observing the scene around her. Friends toasted the couple, and she felt deep satisfaction. However, a subtle unease began to form in her mind, a feeling she couldn't completely identify. Was it the pressure of maintaining appearances, or something more profound? The party continued until late, and when the last guest left, Isabel and Marcos sat together on the couch, exhausted but happy. "It was an incredible night," Marcos said, holding her hand. "Yes, it was," Isabel replied, forcing a smile while trying to ignore the persistent feeling that something was out of place. She couldn't shake the sensation that beneath the surface of their perfect life, there was something she was missing. With that, the night ended, but the seed of doubt had been planted, without Isabel yet realizing its importance. The morning after the party, Isabel woke up early, feeling a bit tired but satisfied with the success of the celebration. While preparing coffee, she noticed that Marcos had already left, leaving a loving note on the counter. "Had to leave early to sort out some issues. Love you." Isabel smiled as she read the note but couldn't help feeling a twinge of curiosity about the issues Marcos mentioned. Decided to enjoy the Sunday to relax, she began organizing the house, still messy from the night before. The remnants of the celebration were scattered around the living room, a testament to the joy and laughter shared the previous night. While storing some papers in Marcos's office, an envelope stood out among the pile of documents. It was a simple envelope but with the name of a company Isabel didn't recognize. At first, she hesitated to open it, but curiosity got the better of her. Inside, she found a series of contracts and financial transactions that seemed nonsensical. The documents indicated transfers of large sums of money to foreign accounts, something that didn't fit with what Isabel knew about Marcos's business dealings. Her heart raced as she flipped through the papers, trying to understand what it all meant. Each page seemed to add another layer of complexity to the puzzle, and Isabel felt a growing sense of unease. Isabel felt a chill down her spine, a sense that something was terribly wrong. She tried to rationalize, thinking there might be a simple explanation, but doubt was already taking root. She put the documents back in the envelope, determined to speak with Marcos as soon as he returned. The day passed slowly, with Isabel distracted, lost in thought. She struggled to maintain normalcy, but the unease persisted. When Marcos finally came home, Isabel tried to act naturally, but couldn't avoid the tension in her voice. "How was your day?" she asked, trying to sound casual during dinner. "It was hectic, but I managed to sort everything out," Marcos replied, not going into details. Isabel hesitated, pondering whether to mention the documents. She decided it was better to wait, to give herself time to think and better understand what she had found. The idea of confronting Marcos without all the facts made her uneasy. The night was silent, with Isabel battling the growing sense of distrust. As she lay beside Marcos, she wondered if her perfect life was about to unravel. The thought of losing what they had built together was terrifying, yet she couldn't ignore the evidence before her. In the days that followed, Isabel couldn't shake the unease that had been with her since discovering the documents. Every interaction with Marcos felt charged with an invisible tension, a careful dance around what was not being said. During breakfast, Isabel observed Marcos more closely, looking for signs that might confirm or dispel her suspicions. He seemed the same as always, attentive and engaged in his daily activities. However, Isabel couldn't rid herself of the feeling that something was being hidden. At work, Isabel found herself distracted, unable to fully concentrate on her tasks. Her colleagues noticed her change in behavior, but she merely smiled and said she was just tired. The truth was that her mind was constantly revisiting the documents, trying to piece together a puzzle that still didn't make sense. One afternoon, while reviewing notes for a report, Isabel received a message from her friend and confidant, Clara. "Let's have lunch? I feel like we need to talk," the message read. Isabel accepted the invitation, knowing she needed to confide in someone she trusted. At the restaurant, Clara listened attentively as Isabel described her discovery and the conflicting feelings that tormented her. "Do you think he's involved in something illegal?" Clara asked, concern evident in her eyes. "I don't know," Isabel replied, frustrated. "None of this makes sense. Marcos has always been so honest, so upright. But these documents, I can't ignore them." Clara pondered for a moment before responding. "Maybe you should investigate more before confronting him. There might be an explanation, but you need to be prepared for any answer." Isabel nodded, knowing Clara was right. She needed more information before making any decisions. The idea of investigating her own husband made her uncomfortable, but she felt she had no other choice. That night, Isabel began planning her next steps. She decided she would use her journalistic skills to seek more answers, even if it meant venturing into unknown and potentially painful territory. The prospect of uncovering the truth was daunting, but Isabel knew she couldn't continue living in uncertainty. As she prepared for bed, Isabel looked at Marcos, who was already asleep beside her. A part of her wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, but another part, the journalist in search of the truth, knew she needed to move forward, no matter how difficult the path. Determined to find answers, Isabel began her silent investigation, carefully balancing her actions to avoid raising suspicion. Using her journalistic skills, she delved into the documents she had found, analyzing every detail in search of clues. During the day, Isabel dedicated herself to work, but during every break, her mind returned to the papers. At night, when Marcos was busy or out, she took the opportunity to discreetly research online, checking the names of companies and accounts mentioned in the documents. One evening, Isabel decided to visit Marcos's office while he was in a meeting. The building was almost empty, and she entered with the excuse that she needed to pick up some papers for him. Inside, Isabel rifled through drawers and files, finding more documents that corroborated her suspicions. Complex financial transactions and contracts with obscure clauses. Isabel felt her heart pound as she copied some information to investigate later. With each new discovery, the reality that Marcos might be involved in something illegal became more palpable, and the weight of that possibility crushed her. In the following days, Isabel used her connections in journalism to obtain more information about the companies and people involved. She discovered that some of them were linked to investigations of financial fraud and money laundering, which only heightened her concerns. The tension between Isabel and Marcos began to grow. He noticed Isabel was more distant, but she always found an excuse, claiming she was overwhelmed with work. Marcos, in turn, seemed increasingly absorbed in his own affairs, which only increased Isabel's distrust. One night, while having dinner, Marcos mentioned a new project he was working on, describing it with enthusiasm. Isabel listened attentively, looking for inconsistencies or clues that might confirm her suspicions. However, Marcos seemed genuine, which left her even more confused. Despite the doubts, Isabel knew she needed to continue her investigation. The truth was out there, and she was determined to find it, even if it meant facing the painful reality that the man she loved might not be who she thought he was. The thought of betrayal was painful, yet Isabel knew she couldn't rest until she uncovered the truth. Isabel spent the days divided between work and her personal investigation, a duality that began to affect her well-being. The constant worry and lack of clear answers left her in a state of permanent tension. She knew she needed to make a decision on how to proceed, but the fear of the consequences paralyzed her. One Saturday morning, while having coffee with Clara, Isabel decided to share what she had discovered so far. Clara listened in silence, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "Isabel, you need to think about what this means for you and your future," Clara advised. "If Marcos is really involved in something illegal, how will that affect your life?" Isabel sighed, looking at the coffee cup in her hands. "I know, Clara. That's exactly what scares me. What do I do if I find out it's all true? How can I continue living this lie?" Clara held Isabel's hand, offering silent support. "Maybe it's time to confront him, Isabel. You deserve to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be." Clara's words resonated with Isabel throughout the weekend. She knew she needed to confront Marcos, but the fear of what she might discover left her hesitant. What if he admitted it? What if everything they had built together was just a facade? On Sunday night, while Marcos watched television in the living room, Isabel sat beside him, trying to gather courage. The silence between them was palpable, laden with unspoken words and unrevealed secrets. "Marcos," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to talk to you about something important." He turned off the television, giving her his full attention, a look of concern crossing his face. "What's going on, love?" Isabel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I found some documents in your office, and I'm worried. I need to understand what's happening." Marcos seemed surprised but didn't say anything immediately. Isabel watched every nuance in his expression, trying to decipher what he was thinking. "What documents?" he finally asked, his voice calm but with a tone of caution. Isabel hesitated, but she knew she couldn't turn back. "Money transfers to foreign accounts, contracts with companies I don't know. Marcos, I'm worried you're involved in something illegal." Marcos remained silent for a moment, and Isabel felt her heart pounding in her chest. The confrontation she feared was finally happening, and there was no way to predict what would come next. The tension in the room was thick, and Isabel knew that the next words would change everything. The silence between Isabel and Marcos seemed to stretch on forever. Isabel felt her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for the response that could change everything. Marcos finally broke the silence, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Isabel, I can explain. But I need you to trust me, at least for a moment." The tension in the air was palpable, but Isabel nodded, encouraging him to continue. She wanted to believe him, but she knew she needed to hear the truth. "Those documents. I didn't want you to see them because I didn't know how to explain," Marcos began, choosing his words carefully. "I got involved in some business deals that, at first glance, might seem suspicious, but everything I did was for the good of our family." Isabel felt a mixture of relief and frustration. Relief that he was finally talking, but frustration at feeling like he was still hiding something. "Marcos, you need to be honest with me. I'm trying to understand, but I need to know everything." Marcos looked at her, sincerity evident in his eyes. "I entered into a partnership with some companies to expand our business. The idea was to quickly increase our profits, but things got complicated. Some of the people I partnered with weren't exactly honest. By the time I realized it, I was already at a point where I couldn't just walk away. Isabel listened carefully, trying to process the information. So, you're saying you got involved with dishonest people without knowing? Yes. And I know it sounds like an excuse, but it's the truth, Marcos replied, his voice full of regret. I was trying to protect you and our life, but I ended up getting involved in something I can't control. Isabel felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to believe that Marcos was just a victim of circumstances, but another part couldn't ignore the warning signs she had seen. Marcos, this is serious. You need to sort this out before it's too late, Isabel said, her voice firm but laden with concern. I know, and I'm trying. I'm cooperating with some investigations to clear my name and get out of this, he replied, holding Isabel's hand with a firm grip. Isabel looked at him, trying to decide whether she believed him or not. The truth was finally in sight, but the implications were enormous. She knew that, regardless of what she decided, her life would never be the same. The trust that had been the foundation of their relationship was shaken, and Isabel wondered if it could ever be fully restored. After Marcos's revelation, Isabel spent the following days in an emotional whirlwind. His confession brought a mix of relief and despair. Relief at finally knowing the truth, but despair at realizing the gravity of the situation they were involved in. At work, Isabel could barely concentrate. Her thoughts were constantly on the conversation with Marcos and what she should do next. She knew she needed to make a decision, but the fear of the consequences left her paralyzed. One afternoon, Isabel met with her colleague and friend, Ricardo, an experienced investigative journalist. She knew she could trust him to provide an objective perspective. During lunch, Isabel told him everything she had discovered, and Marcos's confession. Ricardo listened attentively, pondering what Isabel had revealed. You know you need to act, right? You can't just let this go, he said with a serious look. I know, but I don't want to destroy Marcos's life, Isabel replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. He's trying to sort things out, but I don't know if I can fully trust him. Ricardo nodded, understanding Isabel's dilemma. Maybe you can give him a chance to turn himself in and cooperate with the authorities. That would show he's willing to make amends. Isabel considered Ricardo's suggestion. It was a solution that could protect Marcos from more severe consequences, but still ensure justice was served. I'll talk to him about it. Thank you, Ricardo. I needed to hear that. That night, Isabel returned home determined to have a final conversation with Marcos. She knew it was time to lay everything on the table and decide their future. When Marcos arrived, Isabel called him to talk. We need to discuss what happens next, she began, her voice firm. Marcos nodded, seeming prepared for the discussion. I know I need to turn myself in, Isabel. I can't keep living with this weight. Isabel felt a wave of relief hearing that. If you cooperate, maybe we can minimize the damage. I'll be by your side, but we need to do this together. Marcos agreed, and they spent the night discussing the next steps. Isabel knew the decision wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to face the consequences alongside Marcos, hoping that together, they could overcome this crisis. The path ahead was uncertain, but Isabel felt a sense of resolve, knowing they were taking the first steps toward healing. The decision had been made, and Isabel felt a mix of nervousness and determination as she prepared to face what lay ahead. Marcos, for his part, was resolute in cooperating with the authorities, aware that this was the only way to try to rectify his mistakes. The next morning, Marcos met with his lawyers to discuss the best way to turn himself in and collaborate with the investigations. Isabel accompanied him, offering support and ensuring he didn't face the situation alone. News of Marcos's cooperation quickly spread, and soon Isabel found herself at the center of a media storm. As a journalist, she was used to being on the other side of the news, but now, her personal life was under the spotlight, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. At work, Isabel faced curious looks and uncomfortable questions from colleagues and superiors. However, most respected her privacy, aware of the difficulty of the situation. Ricardo, in particular, was a pillar of support, helping her navigate the legal and emotional complexities that arose. As the investigations progressed, Marcos provided valuable information that helped dismantle the network of corruption he had become involved with. His cooperation was well received by the authorities, who considered his willingness to help as a mitigating factor. Despite this, the personal and professional consequences were significant. Marcos faced the possibility of a reduced sentence, but still, the reality of prison loomed over them. Isabel, in turn, had to reassess her life and marriage, questioning what would remain after the storm passed. Amidst it all, Isabel found strength in unexpected places. Friends and family rallied in support, and she rediscovered her passion for journalism, now more committed than ever to seeking truth and justice. Isabel and Marcos spent nights discussing the future, trying to find a path through the chaos. The love between them, though shaken, still existed, and both were determined to rebuild their lives, regardless of the difficulties they would face. As weeks turned into months, Isabel began to realize that, despite the losses, there was also a sense of liberation. The truth, as painful as it was, had brought clarity and the opportunity for a new beginning. Isabel's journey was one of resilience and courage, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. With each passing day, she grew more confident, more determined to embrace the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. After the initial storm, Isabel began to focus on the task of rebuilding her life. With Marcos fully cooperating with the authorities, she realized that, although the road ahead was difficult, there was a chance to start over. At work, Isabel immersed herself in new projects, using her personal experience to inspire a renewed commitment to investigative journalism. Her determination and integrity earned the respect of her colleagues, and she began to be seen as a figure of resilience and courage. At home, Isabel faced the loneliness that came with Marcos's absence. Visits to the prison were emotionally exhausting, but they also served as a reminder of what they were trying to rebuild. Each meeting was a mix of hope and sadness, but also a shared determination to overcome the past. Isabel found support in her network of friends, especially in Clara and Ricardo, who proved unwavering in their support. Clara often invited her for dinners and outings, insisting that Isabel needed moments of lightness amid the difficulties. Ricardo, in turn, continued to be a professional and personal confidant, helping her stay focused on her goals. With time, Isabel began to explore new opportunities. She was invited to give lectures on ethics in journalism and the importance of truth, using her own experience as a case study. These opportunities not only helped Isabel heal her emotional wounds, but also strengthened her in her mission to make a difference. Meanwhile, Marcos continued to work with the authorities, determined to correct his mistakes. Isabel saw in him a changed man, someone who recognized his flaws and was willing to do whatever it took to regain her trust and respect. Despite the challenges, Isabel began to feel a sense of renewal. The pain and disillusionment of the past were slowly being replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. She realized that, although the path was uncertain, she was stronger and more aware of who she was and what she wanted for her future. Isabel and Marcos knew that the process of reconstruction would be long, but they were committed to facing every obstacle together. The journey had transformed them, and now, they were ready to embrace whatever came, confident that, together, they could overcome any adversity. As time passed, Isabel's life began to take a new shape. The turmoil of the past few months had left deep marks, but it had also paved the way for new possibilities and a clearer understanding of herself and her priorities. Visits to Marcos became moments of reflection and mutual growth. They discussed plans for the future, dreaming of the day they could resume their lives together. Isabel realized that, despite everything, the love between them had strengthened, now based on a deeper and more honest understanding. At work, Isabel continued to excel, now leading a team of investigative journalists on high-impact projects. Her personal experience had become a source of inspiration, not only for her, but for her colleagues, who saw in Isabel an example of integrity and resilience. The lectures Isabel gave on ethics in journalism became increasingly sought after. She shared her story with honesty, using her experiences to teach the importance of truth and transparency. These opportunities not only helped Isabel heal her wounds, but also find a new purpose in her career. In her personal life, Isabel began to explore new interests. She enrolled in a photography course, something she had always wanted to do but never had time for. Through the camera lens, Isabel found a new way to see the world, appreciating the beauty in the simple details of everyday life. With the support of Clara, Ricardo, and other friends, Isabel began to open herself to new social experiences, rediscovering the joy of casual gatherings and carefree conversations. These moments of joy and lightness were essential for her emotional recovery, helping her balance the weight of professional and personal responsibilities. As Isabel continued to build her new life, she and Marcos held on to the hope of a future together. They knew the road would be long and full of challenges, but they were committed to facing each step with courage and love. Isabel's story is one of overcoming and self-discovery. She learned that, even in the most difficult circumstances, it is possible to find strength and renewal. With the past finally behind them, Isabel and Marcos were ready to embrace what the future held, confident that, together, they could face any challenge. And so, with a new beginning in sight, Isabel looked to the horizon, ready to write the next chapter of her life, with renewed hope and determination. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to support the channel.